always wanted to fit in, to be someone people admired, someone people noticed. It was in college, during orientation week, that I saw her, Jessica. She had this aura about her, like she was untouchable, beautiful, confident, and always surrounded by people. And me, I was just another guy in the crowd. It all started so innocently. I overheard her mention how she admired people who traveled. Adventurers, she called them. I felt a sudden urge to say something, anything to make her look my way. Before I knew it, I blurted out, "I backpacked through Europe last summer." Her eyes lit up, and in that moment, I saw the reaction I always craved: admiration. What started as a harmless fib quickly spiraled into a web of lies. She wanted to know more, and I couldn't resist. I fabricated stories about Paris cafes, hiking in the Swiss Alps, and late-night adventures in Berlin. The more I told, the more captivated she seemed, and the deeper I sank into my own deception. After that day, Jessica started talking to me more. I could see her interest, and it was addictive. But the problem with lies is that they demand more lies. I couldn't just stop at backpacking. Suddenly, I was a budding travel photographer with thousands of followers on Instagram. "What's your account?" she asked one day, and panic set in. That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m., creating a fake profile. I downloaded pictures from strangers' accounts, edited captions, and even added fake comments to make it believable. The next day, I showed it to her, and she was impressed. "Wow, you're so talented," she said, scrolling through the fake posts. My heart pounded as I watched her, torn between the thrill of her admiration and the fear of being exposed. Jessica introduced me to her friends, and suddenly, I was part of the group. They were all so accomplished, interning at top companies, winning scholarships, starting businesses. I felt like a fraud. But instead of stopping, I doubled down. I started borrowing stories from others, claiming their achievements as my own. "Oh, I met Elon Musk during a tech conference," I lied one day, casually throwing it into a conversation. The room went silent, and then everyone wanted to hear more. Their admiration felt like a drug, and I was hooked. The first crack in my facade appeared during Jessica's birthday party. Someone asked me to show my photography equipment. "I don't usually bring it out," I said, laughing nervously, "but I'll bring it next time." It was a small lie, but the skepticism in their faces was like a spotlight on my deceit. I thought I could brush it off, but one of Jessica's friends, Kyle, was persistent. He began asking more questions, subtle but probing. "What's your favorite lens? Do you shoot in RAW or JPEG?" His casual tone made it worse because I knew he was testing me. It all came crashing down during a group trip Jessica organized. She insisted I bring my camera, and I had no choice but to admit I didn't own one. The room went silent as the weight of my lies hung in the air. Kyle was the first to speak, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "So no camera, no backpacking trips, no Elon Musk, what else are you lying about?" I tried to defend myself, but it was futile. The more I tried to explain, the angrier Jessica became. After the confrontation, Jessica wouldn't even look at me. The rest of the group avoided me like I was contagious. The ride back from the trip was suffocatingly silent. Jessica sat by the window, her headphones on, and the wall between us felt unbreakable. When we got back, the isolation became unbearable. My phone, once buzzing with group chats, now felt like a dead weight in my pocket. I tried texting Jessica, apologizing profusely, but her only reply was, "I can't trust you anymore." Those words echoed in my mind, louder than any accusation Kyle had thrown at me. I spent days replaying every moment in my head, wondering how I let it get so far. I had a mirror in my room, and every time I looked at it, I didn't recognize the person staring back at me. My reflection felt like a stranger, someone shallow, desperate, and weak. I started avoiding classes and skipping meals. I didn't want to face the whispers and judgment. Even when no one said anything, their glances felt like daggers. My world was crumbling, and it was all my fault. One day, while walking through campus, I bumped into Kyle. My heart sank. I expected another smug remark, but to my surprise, he didn't gloat. Instead, he said, "You should talk to Jessica. She's not as angry as you think." I didn't believe him, but his words planted a seed of hope. That evening, I sat down and wrote a letter. It felt old-fashioned, but I wanted her to feel the sincerity in my words. I explained everything, the insecurities, the pressure, the craving for admiration. I ended it by saying, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm trying to change. I left the letter in Jessica's mailbox, unsure if she'd even read it. For days, there was no response. Just as I was about to give up, I saw her waiting for me outside my class. My heart raced as I walked toward her. I read your letter, she said, her voice calm but distant. I appreciate the apology, but it doesn't erase the hurt. She explained how my lies had made her question her own judgment, how it felt like a betrayal of trust she'd placed in me. I listened, for the first time truly understanding the impact of my actions. After that conversation, I realized I couldn't change the past, but I could work on myself. I started seeing a counselor, opening up about my insecurities and why I felt the need to lie. It was hard, but it was necessary. I also joined a creative writing club. I figured if I had a talent for storytelling, I might as well channel it into something real. Slowly, I began finding confidence in my authentic self, rather than the person I pretended to be. A few weeks later, I bumped into some of Jessica's friends at the library. It was awkward at first, but then one of them said, "We heard you've been working on yourself. That's good." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. I knew rebuilding those relationships would take time, but I was willing to put in the effort. I apologized to each of them individually, owning up to my mistakes without making excuses. One day, Jessica texted me, asking to meet. My hands shook as I read the message. When we met, she said, "I can't forget what happened, but I can see you're trying. Maybe we can start over, as acquaintances, not friends." It wasn't the outcome I'd hoped for, but it was more than I deserved. I thanked her, promising to respect her boundaries and to never take her trust for granted again. Months passed, and though the wounds I had caused hadn't fully healed, life began to feel lighter. Therapy became a place where I could untangle my thoughts and understand why I sought validation through lies. I started journaling regularly, writing down not just my struggles, but my hopes, fears, and truths. Through this process, I realized how much energy I had wasted pretending to be someone I wasn't. One afternoon, sitting by the campus lake, I reflected on the ripple effect my actions had caused. Jessica had been hurt, my social circle had fractured, and I'd lost respect for myself. But I also recognized that those ripples had pushed me toward growth. I made a quiet promise to live more honestly, no matter how uncomfortable it felt. I wouldn't let fear of rejection shape who I was anymore. As I continued to rebuild my life, I made an effort to connect with people in an authentic way. Joining the Creative Writing Club turned out to be one of the best decisions I'd ever made. I found a group of people who appreciated my ideas, not because they were grandiose or exaggerated, but because they were real. For the first time, I felt seen, not for who I wanted to be, but for who I actually was. One day, during a club meeting, I shared a story I had written about a boy who lied to fit in and the lessons he learned about authenticity. When I finished reading, the room was silent for a moment before breaking into applause. A club member leaned over and said, "That was really brave. Thanks for sharing that." It was a small moment, but it felt monumental. Months later, I ran into Jessica at a campus event. She wasn't as guarded as before, and though our interaction was brief, it felt meaningful. "You seem different," she said with a small smile before walking away. Her words lingered, not because they erased the past, but because they affirmed the changes I had worked so hard to make. As graduation approached, I thought about how much I had learned, not just academically, but about myself and the kind of person I wanted to be. The lies I had told might have started a ripple effect of pain, but they also led to growth, understanding, and a deeper appreciation for truth. I realized that while I couldn't change the past, I could shape the future by being honest, kind, and unapologetically myself. The journey wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough.